Ethan's spiritual fire, once blazing with passion and certainty, now flickered weakly in the shadows of his heart. The energy that used to propel him forward, the sense of purpose that once felt unshakable, had become a faint ember, barely visible beneath the weight of daily life. He often found himself sitting in silence, searching for the warmth he used to know, wondering where it had gone, and if it would ever return. Not long ago, he'd felt God's call with thrilling clarity. Every day was a new adventure, every task a chance to serve. He remembered the rush of joy that came from helping others, the deep satisfaction of feeling useful and needed. Back then, his faith was a living, breathing thing, guiding his choices and filling his days with meaning. He would wake up each morning eager to see what opportunities awaited, confident that he was exactly where he was meant to be. He used to write about his dreams, filling pages with hopes and prayers, convinced that his life had a unique purpose. Inspirational words and music would lift his spirit, reinforcing the belief that he was on a special path. Friends and mentors encouraged him, affirming his sense of calling and cheering him on as he pursued what felt like a divine mission. But now, the world's demands and distractions were drowning out that purpose. Bills piled up on the kitchen table, career choices loomed with uncertainty, and family expectations pressed in from all sides. The responsibilities of adulthood felt relentless, each one chipping away at the confidence he once had. The dreams that once seemed so attainable now felt distant, almost childish, as if they belonged to someone else. He scrolled through job postings, anxiety rising with every click, wondering if he was foolish to think he could live differently. The pressure to find stability, to make practical choices, grew heavier each day. He questioned whether his desire to follow a higher calling was just a naive fantasy, incompatible with the realities of life. The more he searched for answers, the more lost he felt, as if the world was moving on without him. The tension between faith and practicality left him exhausted. Each night he lay awake, replaying conversations and decisions, torn between what he believed in and what seemed necessary. The weight of expectations, his own and others, pressed down, making it hard to breathe. He longed for the certainty he once had, but now every choice felt like a compromise, a step further from the life he'd imagined. His prayers grew hesitant. "God, are you still there?" he whispered into the silence, hoping for a sign, a word, anything to reassure him. But the answers didn't come. Instead, silence lingered, and doubt crept in, filling the spaces where faith used to live. He wondered if he was being tested or if he had simply lost his way. The comfort he once found in prayer now felt distant, replaced by uncertainty and longing. Was his awakening just an emotional high? Maybe his purpose wasn't as grand as he'd believed. He revisited old journals, searching for the spark that once ignited his soul, but the words felt foreign, as if written by a stranger. He questioned whether he had misunderstood his calling, or if he had simply outgrown it. The certainty of youth had faded, replaced by a quiet, persistent doubt. The echo of his calling faded, and he feared being lost in the world's noise. Surrounded by the bustle of the city, he felt invisible, just another face in the crowd. The dreams that once set him apart now seemed irrelevant, drowned out by the relentless demands of everyday life. Yet, deep inside, a small hope remained, a hope that somehow, somewhere, the voice that once called him would speak again, and he would find his way back to purpose. One quiet Sunday morning, Ethan found himself standing outside the old brick church, hesitating for a moment before pushing open the heavy wooden doors. The familiar scent of polished wood and candle wax greeted him as he slipped quietly into a back pew, hoping not to draw attention. He glanced around at the congregation, families, couples, and elderly folks, all seemingly at home in this sacred space. For Ethan, though, it felt different. He was there, but not really present, as if he were watching his life unfold from a distance. He sat alone, his hands folded tightly in his lap, feeling more like a spectator than a believer. The words of the prayers and the melodies of the hymns seemed to float past him, barely touching the surface of his heart. He wondered if anyone else ever felt this way, adrift, uncertain, searching for something more but unsure what that was. The music swelled, voices rising in worship, and the pastor's voice echoed through the sanctuary. Yet for Ethan, it all felt distant, like background noise in a life that had grown too busy, too complicated. He tried to focus, to let the words sink in, but his mind wandered to his worries, his job, his future, the plans he'd made that seemed to be unraveling. Then, the pastor began to speak about Abraham, a man called by God to leave behind everything familiar and step into the unknown. The story was one Ethan had heard before, but today it struck a different chord. The pastor's words rang out. "God's purpose isn't an addition to your plans," he said, his voice steady and clear. "It's a replacement. Sometimes God asks us to let go of what we think we need, so he can give us something greater." The words pierced Ethan's heart, cutting through the fog of his doubts and fears. He realized he'd been clinging to his own ideas of success and security, trying to fit God into the margins of his carefully constructed life. But maybe, just maybe, he was being called to something deeper, to trust, to surrender, to let go of control and allow God to lead him into a future he couldn't yet see. Tears welled up in his eyes as the truth settled in. He'd spent so long trying to make room for God in his plans, never realizing that God wanted to be the foundation, not just a part. The emotion caught him off guard, and he wiped his eyes, feeling both exposed and strangely comforted. In that moment, he understood that faith wasn't about having all the answers, but about being willing to follow, even when the path was unclear. As the final hymn played and the congregation bowed their heads in prayer, Ethan closed his eyes and whispered a quiet promise. He would surrender, not just once, but every day, trusting that God's adventure for him wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning again, and this time, he would walk forward with open hands and an open heart, ready for whatever came next. Days later, Ethan sat in a cafe, torn between two futures, a lucrative marketing job and a volunteer role mentoring underprivileged kids. The job promised security and approval. The ministry offered uncertainty, but a chance to serve. As he prayed, Romans 12:1 echoed in his mind, "Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice." Suddenly the choice was clear. One path built his own kingdom, the other built God's. With peace, Ethan declined the job, choosing the uncertain sacrificial path. For the first time in weeks, he felt true worship, his life offered fully to God. Telling his parents was harder than Ethan expected. They saw his choice as reckless, not faithful. Their disappointment stung, and loneliness set in. Friends didn't understand either. Their lives moved forward while Ethan seemed to stall. Doubt whispered, had he made a mistake? Yet, in his solitude, Ethan learned to lean on God more deeply. His prayers became lifelines, and God's presence grew more real. The lonely path was forging a new strength, a dependence on God that comfort and approval could never provide. Ethan poured himself into the after-school program, especially into the life of Maya, a quiet girl battling illness. One day she confided her fears about surgery. Ethan listened, shared a story of God as a shepherd, and prayed with her. Later, Maya's mother sent a photo, Maya in her hospital bed smiling, saying her shepherd was with her. Ethan felt a joy deeper than any paycheck could offer. In comforting a scared child, his purpose came alive, not in grand gestures but in simple, faithful love. As months passed, Ethan's life found a new rhythm, one shaped by service, not ambition. He called it the great unlearning, letting go of the world's definition of success and embracing humility. He learned that life wasn't about personal fulfillment, but about knowing God and making Him known. True joy came from aligning with God's will, serving in small, unseen ways. Each act of kindness, remembering a name, offering a prayer, became an act of worship. He realized he was investing in eternity, not just the present, and that was a freedom he'd never known. The pastor invited Ethan to share his story with the youth group. Nervous, Ethan spoke honestly about his spiritual fire, his doubts, the crossroads, and the joy of serving Maya. The teens, at first indifferent, began to listen. They saw themselves in his struggle, the pressure to succeed, the longing for meaning. Ethan's vulnerability gave them permission to consider a different path. He ended simply, "Purpose isn't hidden, it's saying yes to God today in small ways." Afterwards, students asked how to start. In their eyes, Ethan saw a new spark. His story had ignited hope. Ethan's obedience sparked a movement. Others joined the after-school program, a retired teacher, a bakery owner, teens starting a mentoring group. The ministry blossomed into a community effort. Volunteers found new meaning. Even Ethan's parents began to see the impact. His father quietly supported the program, a small bridge of understanding. Ethan realized a purpose-driven life is never just about you. When you say yes to God, you become a channel for His grace, inspiring others to do the same. His journey was now part of a much larger story. My story isn't unique. It's an invitation. It's a gentle nudge to anyone who's ever wondered if there's more to life than the daily grind, the endless to-do lists, and the quiet ache for something deeper. I've walked roads filled with uncertainty, and I know what it's like to stand at the edge, unsure of the next step. But I also know the hope that comes from believing there's a purpose waiting to be discovered. Maybe you feel the same pressures, doubts, and longing for meaning. Maybe you've asked yourself, is this all there is? Or felt the weight of expectations pressing down. You're not alone in those feelings. We all wrestle with questions about our worth, our direction, and whether our lives truly matter. These questions are part of being human, and they're the very questions that can lead us to something greater. The Bible is full of ordinary people used by God. They weren't superheroes or flawless saints. They were people just like you and me with doubts, fears, and failures. Yet God met them where they were and invited them into His story. Their lives remind us that significance isn't reserved for the extraordinary. It's available to anyone willing to say yes. Purpose begins with surrender. God, I trust you. Use me. It's a simple but profound act of opening your heart, letting go of control, and inviting God to shape your journey. Surrender isn't about giving up, it's about giving over your plans, your fears, your dreams, to the one who knows you best. It's not a one-time prayer, but a daily choice to let God lead. Each morning brings a fresh opportunity to say, "Here I am, God, guide me today." Some days that choice feels easy. Other days, it's a struggle. But over time, those small, faithful decisions add up to a life of purpose and direction. Don't wait for a perfect plan. Start today, serving those around you with what you have. Purpose isn't found in grand gestures or flawless plans, but in the willingness to show up, to care, and to make a difference right where you are. Every act of kindness, every moment of compassion is a step on the journey. Purpose is found in small acts of love and obedience. It's in the quiet moments when you choose to listen, to help, or to forgive. These are the moments that shape your character and ripple out to touch the lives of others, often in ways you may never fully see. God has a unique role for you in His story. Your gifts, your experiences, even your struggles, they all matter. You are not an accident or an afterthought. There is a place only you can fill, a purpose only you can live out. Trust that God can use your life in ways you never imagined. The journey won't be easy, but it leads to true joy and eternal significance. There will be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt, but every step you take in faith brings you closer to the life you were created for. Don't let fear hold you back. Take the first step, even if it feels small. Ask God, what do you want me to be? Who are you calling me to become? These questions open the door to transformation, to discovering not just what you can do, but who you are meant to be. What do you want me to do? Listen for His gentle guidance. Sometimes the answer comes in a whisper, a nudge, or an unexpected opportunity. Trust that as you seek, you will find. Your greatest adventure is waiting. The road ahead is filled with possibility, purpose, and hope. Will you take the first step and accept the invitation?